Hey everybody, Mark from Northeast Bastion here. Well, I'm just going to do voiceover here because it was a little breezy, but the camera audio is never great, so I always figure it's better for me to do some voiceover and just kind of show you, talk to you about what you're seeing here. And I went fishing last week, and as you can tell, this water is really clear. This is a deep, clear water lake near me, and I got there in the and I got there in the morning. It was a little chilly. The water was still at this time 55 degrees. And I did start to see some fish that looked like they were on beds. So you saw that one little guy just get off. I'm just throwing Ned rigs around. I'm throwing the Crazy Hick Helgramite bait. I'm throwing the the fresh baits. Of course, now I can't talk. I'm throwing the fresh baits Hellamite around. And this is the worst landing you'll ever see right here as I attempt to pick up this smallie. He comes right off. That's on the Crazy Hick Helgramite bait there. And you can kind of see some areas that look like they're clear, like bed-like. At this point in the morning, and there's another one who got off, I did kind of go over. There was a boat in front of me. So I kind of thought, well, if fish are kind of on beds, if there's a boat in front of me, he's probably picked them off already. So let me go around to the other side, and I'll work the opposite way around the lake. And I think the fish had just moved up on beds. A lot of the bass on beds, especially early in the morning, were males, and they were really. Usually, you throw a Ned or whatever by a fish on a bed, and they just want to kill it. They were just looking at it. They were not interested in it. They just kind of stared at the bait, or they swam away. As the day went on and it warmed up, they did get more aggressive. So maybe it was the cold night. Maybe some of them had been caught already. I don't know. But as the day went on, it got to be, you can see it was a clear, sunny day. The water, I think, was 57, 58 by the time I left. And the fish just got more aggressive as the day went on. And I would say this lake is probably... Well, there's another one who got off. I had a lot of that happen early in the day. I did see the bigger females cruising around, probably in 10 feet, sometimes up into the shallows, and they were just cruisers. I don't know if they're pre-spawn, females that are getting ready to move up. But they would not touch a bait. I tried making long-distance casts with jerk baits at them. I threw Neds in front of them. I threw Helgramites in front of them. They wouldn't eat anything. I guess their mind is just totally on going to spawn, and they're just kind of in that mode of getting up there and getting on the beds. I don't think they've been there and are done. I really don't. So I think a lot of these fish you'll see here are probably males. Some of them were bigger. They may have been females as it got later in the day. I caught some that were a lot better that I actually used net for. Like this fish here, compared to the other ones I was catching, where it was a pretty decent fish. I did do a lousy job of showing some of these fish to the camera, so I apologize for that. As you can see, when this ends, I just kind of went, oh, here's the next one. But definitely, you can tell, real super clear water. And, this lake's like 100 feet deeper in spots. And I would just throw up if I saw what I thought was a bed, I would just throw up by it. If I saw a rock pile, I would throw up by it. Sometimes I would say it was definitely a bed. Sometimes I would say they were just hanging out by the rocks. But it did get easier to kind of catch them later in the day, or as the day went on. This is probably, I got there maybe 7:30, and then by 10:30, 11, the sun was overhead and you could see everything pretty clearly. There were some what I would classify as beds that were empty. I didn't see anything on them. Now I don't know, like I said, there were other boats out. Maybe someone caught them earlier. Maybe they were done. Maybe they had gone up and started making them. It got colder at night. Who knows? But I would say they were definitely just getting up there. And I've got that. That's one of the old pink tech bait Neds on there. So I kind of there was a little tree down there that had looked like a little bed next to it. I threw down by it, lay down in the water. Little guy. Definitely a lot of little males up, and that's on that pink Ned. I think what helped too, when I first started, fishing, I had a 1/4 ounce Ned head on. I think when I switched off to that 1/8 ounce Ned head, just a little lighter, felt a little, was a little more finessey, fell a little slower. I think that seemed to help too. It could have been, just got later in the day. I definitely think that lighter Ned helped. It was just a little slower fall right around there, because I had never seen, this one here turned out to be a halfway decent one. I'd never seen smallmouth on beds that were unaggressive. Usually when it's not hard fishing when they're on beds. It's, you just throw a bait by it and they usually eat it. That was a little better one. But the biggest fish I did catch a couple decent ones, in that 3-pound range during the day. A lot of them were, then I caught a lot of those little 12, 13-inch males. But the biggest fish I saw were the fish that were cruising, the females that were not on beds. They were just cruising along, and you could see them in 8, 10, 12 feet, and they were just in packs, 5, 10 of them, just, cruising along real slow. And then you throw a bait by them and they'd scatter. They were not interested in anything. Those would have been the nice ones to catch. So who knows? Maybe a week later on this same lake, all those females would have been locked on beds, and you maybe could have, plucked a few off. But there's a decent one there. A little better fish. And you can see, as you kind of look at the water, you see those little white spots. Some of them are just sand spots on the water, and some are like, actual beds. And you got a lot of these little guys that are around. They're just up there either by what could be a bed, or is probably a bed, they're making the bed, or they're just up there next to like a rock or something. I can kind of see the beds there on the left that I'm kind of throwing the net up by. And sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not. But I definitely did not see what I would classify as like any, or that many big like females up there. They were definitely the cruisers. There was 2 or 3 areas of the lake that I've seen it in the past, and then I saw it again that day when I was there earlier in the week. That they just kind of cruise around. I guess they're getting ready to move up, and as I said, maybe a few days later, they'd actually be on those beds. But it's pretty easy. It's not hard fishing when they're up like this. And even if you're not sure there's a bed there, if you throw it up by rocks and things, you'll catch them. I actually went out fishing on a different lake yesterday, and it was kind of like that. It didn't look like there were beds there, but I just saw rock piles and threw the Ned up or the Hellgrammite up, and they'd eat it. Or they were there. But just some little guys. Just going through some little guys. And I'm just using, that's my Abu Garcia. It's an Abu Garcia combo I got a few years ago, 7-foot medium rod. I think it's 6 or 8 pound fluoro I got on there, and just a quart. I was using it when I switched that 1/8 ounce. As I told you earlier, that 1/8 ounce Ned head seemed to work a little better. And sometimes the angle of of the camera showing what isn't the perfect. That was actually one of the better ones there that I got throughout the day. It was one of the better smallies I caught. But when you see beds like that, sometimes you don't see them till you get close to them. You're swinging the boat around, you're going back, and a fish misses it. Like here, either I didn't see the bed or a fish missed it, so I turned around and facing the other direction. So I'm not quite always on the right. I have the camera on the right side. And some of them I can just flip up in the boat. Some of them are a little better. I'll grab the net. I try to get them back in the water as quick as possible, because I know they're going to go back to their beds. That was a decent one right there. I don't remember if I showed him probably didn't show him to the camera very well, but that was a decent smallie right there. Did a lousy job showing that one to the camera, I'm sure. Once it got calm, though, not that it wasn't really a windy day ever, but that sun was up and it was really calm. You could see the rocks along the bank very well. Nice spring day. There was actually a few boats. It's a lake where I go usually, and I don't see a lot of other boats, but there was actually other guys fishing. There was a lot of people out on kayaks. It was really the first nice day after about, a week of rain. So I think a lot of people are waiting for a nice day to get out even after Memorial Day, after the holiday. You see that pink Ned there I'm throwing. And I was throwing like the old, I was throwing like a combination of some of the old tech bait Neds, the bum Ned from Crazy Hick Bait Company, because Jason's got a few like they're in that pinkish color. I was throwing that. I think he calls it cotton candy. I'd have to look again, but that one was good. That's good for the beds. There's something about that pink color that the smallies just hate. And then the Helgramite he has, and then the Helamite from Fresh Baits. I was throwing that. There was like a pink one, the chartreuse pink one. Any of those bright colors. I do like those bright colors. When I'm sight fishing. I think the smallies just seem to hate those bright colors, and it's easy for me to see them too. So if I just see the bait go down and disappear, it's pretty simple. I had one point where a smallie stole my my Crazy Hick bum Ned, stole that, and then I threw one of the Somatis hollow tip worms. He's like a yellow one. I threw that down, and he ate it, and he spit out my that might even be right there. He might have spit out my Ned bum that he stole earlier, because I did steal a few baits. But you can kind of see how it's a little lighter there, just throwing up by the light spots around the rocks. Did take a break throughout the day here and sit down. There was some eagles nesting, and they were both sitting up in the tree in different spots. There were people on kayaks were checking them out. I was watching them for a while I took my lunch break. But it was a good day, guys. It was a good day. Sight fishing for smallies. It's not, there's a couple times of the year I get out and do it, and they move up shallow in the spring. But to me, it's the water's been cooler. It's been a late spawn this year, at least by me. I did go fishing yesterday, and they were on beds. But they weren't on beds like usually. It's a lake where the minute you launch, they're right there, and you see them all over this one bank. I hardly saw any there, but I did see them on other parts of the lake. So I think they're just starting to move up too there. And that water was 59 degrees. It was like 61 by the time I left, so it's still cool. The water's very cool. We actually had a spring this year. That was a decent one right there. We actually had a spring. It didn't just go to like 90 degrees in early May, and then the spawn came and went in like a week, and it was over. I think it's extended. Water is high. Water is cool. The fish didn't, the water didn't get warmed up real fast, so they all kind of ran up and spawned and got done, so that by late May, early June, they were all done already, like it has been lately. So this was like the ideal day to sight fish, super sunny, no wind, pretty easy to see them. And I think just as I said earlier, once it warmed up and that sun came up overhead, that really, they did get more aggressive. And there's a decent one right there. Nice looking smallmouth. It's one of the Helamites from Crazy Hick, or not from Crazy Hick, from Fresh Baits. But both those guys make great baits if you guys like to sight fish or you're fishing shallow for smallmouth. Those bright colors and just that style of bait just works so well. The smallies have a hard time. Resisting anything near a bed, when they're in that mood. But they really munch on these small finesse baits. And I had, like I said, an 1/8 ounce jig head on there. It's actually an old Tech Baits painted pink one. It was a pink head, pink jig head. But you can see I got him there. Outside looks like that Helamite. That's like chartreuse on one side and pink on the other. And I actually showed them to the camera, which is good. So all in all, of all the fish I caught throughout the day, I don't know how many. I don't know how many altogether, but caught a lot of them. And then you'd think you'd go through an area and you'd say, oh, I guess there's no beds here. And then all of a sudden I'd be going along with the boat and kind of looking down, and all of a sudden you'd see, okay, well, there's like 5. You know, it seemed like, oh, maybe there's no beds in this area. And then all of a sudden you're surrounded by them. But I didn't see, you know, with the water so clear and those smallies just blend right in, you don't really see them. You know, a lot of times you'll look to and hope you see a tail, kind of you see the tail, and it kind of gives it away that they're there. But I didn't, that didn't happen for me. They were just kind of, you know, they were just either, you know, they were there and you didn't see them. But that's it, guys. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon. Later.